everyone, welcome back. It has been a hot minute with gardening wrapping up and then hunting season and then the start of the holidays. It's been busy. We've been traveling back to my parents a lot to hang out with them for Thanksgiving. Just a couple of other events we had going on down their way. But I'm coming to you today to bring you a how to build a Christmas wreath. So, I have all my supplies. I'm going to show them to you and then I'm going to get set up in the basement because it's warmer and I really don't want to work on it because it's 10 degrees outside. Currently, I have some red sticks and I'll end up trimming and really just using like this little bit just to add some pops of color. I found these red berries down at my parents' house, and I picked some of these. So I'm hoping to use those. I have some pine cones from our pine trees. I dehydrated some orange slices to add those in. I, of course, have trimmings from Christmas trees or boughs. A lot of times when you go to get your Christmas tree, if you go to a Christmas tree farm, they'll have bundles of boughs that you can buy, and then you can make your own. You just kind of start with a whole bough and then just trim it down to smaller pieces. Leave a little bit of room so that you can clean off a little bit of the stem, and then you just kind of tuck it all in, gather it in bunches, and I'll show you that. I have a wreath form. You can use any kind. I like to use the metal ones, but you can use, I think they have grapevine ones. You could use that if you wanted to. And then another important thing to have is paddle wire. I actually used this last year for last year's wreath. I just didn't cut it. So it works really well. I want to say this is 113G. But I want to say it's like 24 gauge or something like that. You want something that you can pull taut so you can still manipulate really easily, but not something that you're going to pull and it's going to snap. So that's kind of the important things to have. Really, you can decorate it with anything. Once you have your pine boughs all wrapped together on the wreath, you can put whatever you want for decorations. I have a ribbon too somewhere that I'll put on when I'm all done. But yeah, so let's get set up and then I'll get started showing you how to put it together. So as a quick tip, this is a full tree bough. And just to trim it down, I have my clippers. Just kind of pick a spot and trim some off. Trim a piece off there. And then I might use like this tall piece. A little bit more fill-ins. You can definitely use ends that you've already cut. Sometimes you notice them, sometimes you don't. Might have to play with it and tuck it in more. But I just go through and clip these off. You don't need every single one, especially if you have a pretty, the pack of boughs that I got is really, really full. So I don't need every single one. I don't have to be trying to get the most out of every one. Then when this is all done, I take and give it to the goats. Recycling at its best. Okay, we are all set up in my much warmer basement. This is the wreath form that I'm going to do. I'm going to take my paddle wire. You see that? Unwind a little bit, and I'm going to pick a spot, probably here. So I'm just going to wrap around one of these posts a couple times. And that's going to give me a secure starting point. So I'll tuck that in. And then it's attached. I'm not going to cut this paddle wire until the very end. Actually, last year, I didn't cut it at all. I just tucked it in the top and then pulled it out, unwrapped the whole thing when I gave all the pieces to the goats so that I could reuse the paddle wire. So I might even do that. I have 2 wreath forms, so would have to cut it. So I might cut it. Undetermined at this point. then what I'm going to do, pretty easy, just take your pine boughs and gather them. Whatever size grouping, bunch, however you want to look at this, you make, that will be what determines the size kind of the rest of them, and then how thick your wreath is going to end up being. So I'm just going to gather in some of these because I like a thicker wreath. So I gather them all up, points all at one end. For a little bit cleaner of a wreath, you can kind of clean these off, and then it makes it easier to tuck pieces down on. And then all I'm going to do, challenging to do up in the air, I'm going to lay them down on the wreath form. And I'm going to wrap the paddle wire around twice, pulling it nice and tight. Come up for a third time, and then come a little closer on to this. So when I lay this on, I lay it pretty much straight with the form, but the next couple I will do a little different. So there, I have that one secured on, so it's pretty much just laying with the form. Then I'm going to gather up another bunch. And once I have that second bunch built together, I'm going to take it and I'm going to tilt it. I'm going to lay it on top of the other one, covering the ends of the other one, and I'm going to tilt it out. So if I were to look at this, this one's here, this one's tilted more out. Then I'm going to wrap the paddle wire around that nice and tight, working my way down. And don't worry, it gets more secure as you go because you keep adding wraps. So okay, that's my third bunch there, or my second bunch. So I'm going to work on my third bunch. So now we have a third bunch. One more piece. Go. So this one I'm going to alternate it, and instead of it facing out, I'm going to make it face more in. So this one's facing more out. This one's going to face a little bit more in. I'm going to slide it down to where I'm happy with the location. I'm going to take my paddle wire and I'm just going to wrap it. And I'm going to pull that tight. So that's kind of the start of the wreath. I mean, I really just like to fill them out, pack them out nice and thick. You can kind of fuss with it at the end as to how it all looks and diagonals. You can clean stuff up by trimming pieces off if needed or whatnot. But I just repeat that. So, and I kind of point them in, out, opposite direction of what I just did every time I go around. So we go wrap around. I'm just gonna keep securing so that one pointed more of an out direction to fill out. So then my next one, I'm gonna gather up a couple more. This one we're going to point more inward. Usually 2 to 3 wraps is about all you really need. nice thing about pine wreaths is they fill out really fast. Next one on. Out. Just wrap it up twice. How this is filling out already. Now, if it ends up as you go around, you decide, oh my goodness, I made it like this side's so poofy and this side's not. The good news, these wreaths, you can just trim them. They just up and disappear. If you're doing like a lavender or a flower wreath, then you have to unwrap it, quite honestly, unless you're gonna cut it out, but you're risking the stem showing. You don't notice that with a pine wreath nearly as much, so it's a lot easier to get away with. Not necessarily knowing what you're doing. They're good ways to practice. I've done quite a few pine wreaths at this point, and I find them way easier than doing like a lavender or baby's breath wreath or something like that, just because at the end of the day, it's really easy just to move stuff around on them or trim it out and you don't notice it, whereas with flowers, it's pretty easy to notice what's changed or what looks different or what's changed or anything like that. So it's definitely a little thicker than it needs to be, reaching into the middle, but I'll just trim that out. Another way you can avoid that is have shorter pieces that you're working with. So some of these pieces are rather long, like, I mean, that's quite a bit longer. So when you're working with pieces like that, it tends to make your wreath a little bit bigger because there's just a bigger reach that the branches are able to make. So sometimes if you want like a more or a smaller, thinner wreath, start with smaller pieces. Like I said, I like the big, thick wreaths, so it doesn't bother me. But if it doesn't have an actual hole in the center, then debatably, is it a wreath? Or is it just a giant, flat kissing ball instead of a three-dimensional one? So you get to the end, or come back to the completion of your wreath, you have a couple different options for finishing it out. The easy option is to kind of leave that section a little smaller. That's where you put your bow. That's where you can hang it from with ease. Really what you're going to do, you're just going to take this first piece that you tied in. You're just going to kind of keep pushing that back and tie in pieces as you go from there. So I will keep pulling out some pieces here. It's like you start getting nervous that you're almost to the end, but the reality is it still takes quite a bit to actually get to that end. So you have a long time to think about it as you're coming up to it. It's not like, oh my gosh, I only have 2 left. The reality is you probably have 2 or 3 on top of whatever you think is going to be your end. So don't panic just because you think you're getting close to the end. I usually do leave mine a little thinner at the end, just because then I know I have a defined top or bottom, wherever I'm putting the ribbon. I usually hang it from that spot, so. But that's just me. You do whatever you want. Okay. Let's see how many hands I got for this. Okay. So this is going to be, I think, my last one. So I have my bundle, and I'm just going to shove it down in there. And then you just kind of weave your wire down in. Okay. So now we'll see how well I can tell what's going on with it when I'm looking over the top. So this one's definitely needs some cutout to make a middle. I think it is relatively, it's a little lopsided. So we'll make a little bit of trim, but I think I'm going to call that good for the top. So I'm going to do a pair of wire cutters. I'm going to cut a decent tail on my wire. I can set that down. Let's spin this so you can hopefully see it. So I've got the tail of my wire. I'm going to wrap this around. Bring it all the way down here. Some of the wire where I started. And just kind of thread it through so it'll stay tight. They usually stay still pretty well. So then I have my wreath. And then I usually don't trim them until I have them hung up. So let me see where I can hang this up. And then I'll trim this one out and decorate it for you. Okay, so here is the wreath that I have put together. I'm going to trim it a little bit. It's a little bit too thick in the middle. I think otherwise I'm pretty happy. I might trim out. how to decorate it. So I have some ribbon. These are just ribbons that because I've purchased wreaths in the past. It's where I just save my forms every year, and I've saved the ribbon. So I already have that. And you can do, you can do it on the side, you can do the bottom. I usually like to do the top. I'll just wrap the bow right in here. Twist it up a couple times to make it secure. And then fluff it. And then decorate to your heart's desire. So now that I have my decorations, so I just took my oranges and put them on some wire. So So usually if you're going to add in like stick-like things, I don't bother to wire them. You can hot glue them, wire them if you want to. I just kind of work them into the mass in the back. And they actually usually seem to hold in place even in our high winds up here. So you're just going to kind of thread them in there. And so far I've had luck with them staying still. And just like that, the wreath is done. So I can put that on. I usually hang it on my front door. Wondrous. So I will say, I don't recommend doing this inside unless you're very prepared to clean, because it is a messy project. So now I need to go clean up my mess. I have my little wreath here, but I think I'm going to do mostly just the red sticks with. Thank you everyone for watching along. I hope you're able to make your own wreath this holiday season, and I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. Thanks everybody.